All right, we are live. Hey, folks, this is your weekly news update where we're going to recap the important things that you guys need to do uh, to know what's been happening. Uh, Hopefully, you guys are having a great lunch out there. We're going to be trying to go through this the next maybe 10, 20 minutes. So, the first thing, if you haven't noticed, those of you guys who have retirement accounts, self directed IRAs, Roths, the gravy train might be ending here, as you know, Congress has kind of earmarked to go after a lot of these tax deferred accounts. If you kind of read through the verbiage here on the bottom left, basically, this is not put into law quite yet, but basically what they're doing is they're just trying to make it really hard for people to use this. And in my opinion, if you guys have watching the news these last few years, Peter Thiel, the guy from PayPal, what he did is he put a bunch of money into his retirement account as Class B shares, which is kind of your general partnership side that aren't worth anything in the beginning. And then obviously those shares blow up because it's more based off carried interest. But anyway, he kind of bunked the system, and Congress and the IRS are a little pissed off. So they're changing the rules, and it ultimately hurts all of us. I've always been a proponent not to invest in retirement accounts because you are the government's kind of got a lien on all your stuff when you have that. And if you guys want to hear my whole argument why I'm not a big proponent for any retirement accounts, go to simplepassivecashflow.com/QRP to go learn more. There's other videos on this channel that you guys can check out that I've talked in great lengths about it. But the news is they're going after these accounts and saying that you may not be able to use them for investing in private placements or syndications. And right now, the people are like, "Oh my God, they're gonna like kick us out right away. What's gonna happen?" Supposedly, they're gonna give you kind of like a 2-year phase out period where you have to exit. Now, again, these are just rumors, right? But I think it's not a question of if, but when. Another thing that I've been hearing about is they're going to have you jump through all these loops for getting appraisals. Now you just kind of submit a paper saying what is your investment worth, and they kind of just take it for what it's worth. But what I'm seeing is maybe they say, well, you have to go get this really expensive $10,000-$20,000 appraisal done every year, and that's just too much for the average person's $25,000 IRA account. It's just not going to be practical. Again, the government's trying to go after the people who have stuffed, millions of dollars in their retirement accounts and hid it away from taxes. But we're kind of all the collateral damage in the fallout. If you guys got any questions on this, type it into the comment box below. We'll try and answer it live, but we'll move off to the next big news, which is a lot of this has been happening last year, right? I think AOC came out with a lot of these pictures of tax the rich. Well, it's not taxing the rich, it's taxing the wealthy guys that they're missing out on. The tax system is broken, in my opinion, because it's based on this progressive tax bracket system where all the smart people are doing it. They're just lowering their adjusted gross income. And how are they doing that? Well, various ways. One of the biggest is with real estate. With real estate, you're able to deduct the price of the asset over the length of the ownership. Even though you're not losing money, it's a paper loss. And you have a big enough paper loss, you can drive your income down to almost nothing. So, all these headlines are about, yeah, let's go tax the $400,000 people who make more than that. Well, doesn't do any good when people are just making their income a lot less, kind of flying under the radar with this stuff. So, I mean, sure, this looks like a big win for the average American, but the wealthy know how to play the games. And unless you change the tax uh, bracket system, I mean, people are just going to go fly under the radar while the majority of people just are totally oblivious to this. But I guess that's the whole point, right? That's why you make laws this way, so people can feel vindicated by taxing the rich, but they don't realize how the taxes really work. But generally, Biden's kind of going after the high income earners over $400,000. And I mean, that makes sense to me, right? I mean, but again, that's not how people are taxed. They're taxed based on their adjusted gross income, which can be lowered via a bunch of deductions. While we're on the subject of taxes, from Wallet Hub here, they came up with, because you got two separate things. You have personal income taxes, and you have corporate taxes. These are always two things debated. Trump's big thing was to lower the corporate taxes down to around 21% so that they were able to repatriatize a lot of companies to come back because companies are smart. They'll just redomicile wherever their headquarters are at, where they pay taxes out of, to pay the lowest taxes. I mean, it's completely logical what companies do. So if you make it a lower enough tax rate, then ideally they come back and you as the country can collect those taxes there instead of going somewhere else and paying a lower tax rate in a different country. But here are some of the rates that some of these companies are paying. The, the companies paying the highest tax rates are in the 60s to 90%. But I think the ones that get a bad rap for themselves are the companies paying the lowest tax rates, which is number one, Wells Fargo, who paid a negative 1,000%, Salesforce, who paid a negative 59%, and Obvive, which is a negative 36%. Also notables on that list were Adobe, IBM, Medtronic. A lot of you guys work for Medtronic, actually. General Electric and NVIDIA, the chip makers. Some other takeaways here is that the overall tax rate that the S&P 100 companies pay is around 20%. And right now, they're saying that they're probably going to be raising this. Again, everything, the last slide, this slide, these are all kind of rumors. What typically happens is there's kind of a knee-jerk reaction and kind of settles somewhere in the middle. But, this is just the early indication of where things are following. So the question is, if the corporate tax rates are increased over the current 21%, will countries drop ship and will America lose that revenue? On August 26th, if you haven't heard the news, the um, federal moratorium on residential evictions went away. And basically what happened is the Supreme Court noted that the moratorium has put the applicants along with the millions of landlords across the country at risk of irreparable harm by depriving them of rent payments with no guarantee of eventual recovery. Despite the CDC's determination that landlords should bear a significant financial cost of the pandemic, many landlords have modest means, preventing them from evicting tenants who breach their leases. Which I would say is completely right. Like most people in the country, and I think a lot of the mainstream media out there portrays landlords as keep making money hand over fist, which might be true because some landlords have paid off properties, and I don't know why people do that in the first place. But if you're utilizing good debt, utilizing the banking system, how it's supposed to be used, your margins are pretty thin. So it's not like landlords are that wealthy. They'll get there over time, but that way, that I think the Supreme Court kind of stood up, and it was probably because of the lobbyists that you know cooler minds prevailed. So no more rent moratoriums, and this is what really separates the mom and pop investors who are owning their own rentals. And we'll hire large property management firms to kind of manage this for us. Since the beginning of the year, I mean, look here in the bottom right, national average rents have been skyrocketing, just absolutely on a tear. I think on average, annual rent increases maybe go up 2 to 3%. I mean, we've seen that maybe in the first couple of months already this year, and then it keeps going up after that. Whereas the mom and pop investors are still shaking. They're scared because of all this rent moratorium going away, and they're wondering what's going to happen. Here's a little quick timeline of what happened with this COVID moratorium. But basically, it's all over now. You can start evicting people, but we've been people don't pay, we file the necessary paperwork to evict them as part of the property manager's SOPs. It's been pretty much business as usual, unless you live in these green states here, Washington, California. I believe that's New Mexico, I think. Um, I don't invest there anyway. But Minnesota, I think that's probably Chicago or Illinois, where I don't know why you'd want to invest in Illinois. And then the Northeast, bunch of states up there. These select states still have the state eviction moratoriums in place. And I don't know why you would be wanting to invest in these types of markets in the first place. Um, and, and and like I said, rents have been increasing at a very high clip. And here are some of the where the top markets are being increased. Phoenix at the top there, and I mean it's just a whole pretty much all markets are kind of just going really well in terms of rent increases. It kind of makes sense for like a landlord to like, hey, if people aren't paying, we'll get them out because the next person will probably pay 5, 10, 20% more than what the person who's giving you trouble. Uh, Here, this graphic came up by John Burns. The single family rent index year over year rent growth. I mean, a lot of green here. A lot of it greater than 10% or 6 to 10%. I think the only places that are kind of slower are the Bay Area, Orange County, and then the Northeast. But I think a lot of that has to do with people wanting to get over out of those already overpriced city centers. But I think people are kind of moving right back into the Bay Area and New York. Some of the reasons why is higher asking rents, because of new home construction in many markets, extremely tight supply for housing supply, where single family renters who want to buy a home are searching too because of low interest rates, the stronger price appreciation. People they see the big prices, they can't afford it, so what do? They just turn right back around and start and continue renting. And consumers place a premium on living space, so they're willing to pay more in terms of rent and their homes because they feel like they're going to be in their houses more. And that probably just has to do with the pandemic where we're all kind of cooped up for a year or two. Here's a graphic that came out where flip sweep states or swing states, not in terms of politically going red to blue or blue to red, but from going from majority of owner occupied to renter cities. So if you can kind of see where the heat map is on the left side, where these cities have flip flopped, your top cities that have flip flopped are Maryville, Virginia, Brownsville, Florida, San Pablo, California, Hawaiian Gardens, California, Almonte Springs, Florida, Inkster, Michigan, Jennings, Missouri, Eastlake, Orient Park, Florida, Arcade, California, and Country Club, Florida, to name a few. A lot in California, Florida, and the Northeast. Now, some places to watch out for are Azusa, California, Morrisville, North Carolina, South Pasadena, California, Lakewood, Ohio, Escondido, California, Newport, Kentucky, Oakland Park, Florida, SeaTac, Washington, Sunrise Manor, Melrose Park. So these are the top 10 likely to flip to more renters in the very near future. Where are the new developments coming back online? Well, no surprise. Number 1, Dallas. 2, Houston. 3, Atlanta. 4, Miami. And 5, Phoenix. And this is how we like to invest. We like to look on for trends like this. This is a new HEB, which is a grocery store in the South. They are building in Willis, Texas. So that's kind of earmarked here on the right side with this map. What does this mean? Well, means like places like the Conroe, the Woodlands, Spring, Texas, are becoming more bigger cities because the development keeps sprawling out on the 45 in Texas, for example. There are many markets very similar to this. You just have to be astute to what's happening out there, and it doesn't take a rocket science to kind of figure this stuff out, which is why we like real estate investing. We also like to follow what the big guys are doing. So I'll follow what Sam Zell here on the right side. He's buying real estate, and two big dividend ETFs are following what he's doing. He says, as an investor, I look to real estate as an area where we're dealing with hard assets and brick and mortar. There may be a lot of people who get a lot out of joy out of virtual assets, but somehow or another, there's a great deal of comfort that comes from being able to see and touch and understand. Right now, everybody's talking about NTFs. Well, NTFs go up and down with trends. I've got a future podcast where I was in a family office a meeting, and they did talk very briefly about NTFs. Is since the beginning of time, wealthy people have gone after collectibles such as wine and art, and NTFs are really no different. But they go up and down in waves. So obviously now is when everybody's talking about NTFs. So now is not the time to do it. It's when people aren't talking. That's when you want to do it, or when the average Joe on the internet is not talking about it. They always said, the wealthy people, it's always been a good rule of thumb is, to buy 2 cases of wine, drink one, but then keep the other one for long-term hold. Blackstone is another big investment group that we like to follow. Don't know how much this, don't really want to read into this too much, but they bought the Chamberlain Group, which makes garage door openers. Now, maybe you could make the argument that they feel like home construction is going to be going up, and therefore, you got to put those garage openers and all of that new construction or rehabs. But they might have just gotten a good deal on it from a distressed owner. So we'll never know, but that's what they are doing. For those people who have left the world of home flipping behind, why not, man? I like home flippers because they pay all my taxes for me because it's all ordinary income for them. But anyway, Adam came up with this graphic where, home flipping increasing in volume, but the margins are going way down for these guys. So what that is telling me is volume just means that a whole bunch of more people are doing it. And this is what happens when you have increased competition. Profit margins go down for everybody. This is why we've kind of gotten away from doing smaller Class C apartments, because it doesn't take much for some guys to get a bunch of money together and go buy a 50, even a 100-unit property. And we've seen the yields go down for a lot of those properties. In fact, a lot of those guys will pay the same price per unit for a Class C crappy asset as a Class B asset. And that concludes the report. If you guys haven't yet, check out my free book. If you guys are new to financial freedom ideas and you guys are, maybe still in credit card debt, you need to get or freshly out of college, text the word BASIC to 314-665-1767 to get the financial basic e-course. So I created this e-course because, a lot of people on simple passive cash flow were more accredited investors, but what do the people do when they're just starting out? So if you got any young folks in your family that have just started working or maybe still in college or in high school, share that. It's a free e-course for them because nobody else teaches financial literacy out there. Also, if you guys want to get access to the Remote Rental Lite e-course, they can text the word remote to that same number, 314-665-1767, and you can get on board with buying rental properties, which is how I started my investing career back in 2009. For you other accredited investors, we are going to be doing a free syndication cram school on October 16th. That's a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific. If you guys want more information about that, please join our investor group at simplepassivecashflow.com/club or email the team. All right. If you guys like these videos, we're going to try doing them every week since there's a lot of news coming out, and share it with your friends.